Speaking to CNN, GOP rep Adam Kinzinger says that he fears a civil war is possible and that it is naive not to think it could happen. But I actually think we're in some kind of civil war, and many of you have heard me say it. It's funny, though. Back in 2018, when I started talking about the possibility of some kind of civil war, I was mocked for it. And now we have mainstream left and establishment personalities, mainstream media absolutely pushing this idea. And Republicans, mind you, Adam Kinzinger does not like Donald Trump, and that may be an understatement. And he's coming out saying there's a very real possibility of civil war. But ladies and gentlemen, this main story, I believe, suggests not only are we in a civil war, but it's substantially worse than most people realize. And this is the story about a thread from conservative Congressman Troy Nehls, who said Capitol Police broke into his office, took photographs, and even came back and interrogated one of his staff members. Not maybe. This is all some big misunderstanding. But we also have a story, a statement from Louis Gomer, who says the DOJ has been looking at letters from his constituents. Perhaps all one big misunderstanding. Is this story, as the Capitol Police claim, that they were simply investigating why his door was open? Or are they trying to dig up dirt and spy on political rivals who are challenging the uniparty establishment machine? Troy Nehls certainly does challenge Nancy Pelosi, and he thinks this is why he's being targeted. It doesn't matter which version of events you think is true. The Capitol Police have come out and they've said, well, we were just investigating an open door. And maybe that's reality. Of course, left-wing activists, establishment activists are saying that must be the truth. While others are looking at what Troy Nehls is saying and pointing out the DOJ and the Capitol Police have crossed the line. I don't know which version of events is actually the true version, but it doesn't matter, and that's the point. Both sides are adamant in their worldview. Both sides are adamant. They are telling the truth. And you have people who will absolutely stand behind the government no matter what they say, even when it's obvious they're lying. And you have people who will side with those who are opposing the establishment and give them the benefit of the doubt because we have seen far too many lies from the government. Right now, of course, as you know, there is a major trucker convoy in Ottawa. While not a part of the U.S. conflict necessarily, it is culturally related. We are seeing a major divide between left and right, whatever you want to call it. Left seems to be the establishment. That's what they mean. When they say left wing, they mean pro-establishment. And right wing is out-group anti-establishment. And it's not just in the U.S., it's in Canada, and it's very much related, even though I should say the political conflict is very different. Outside of what appears to be the expansion of the Capitol Police, as we have already warned about, you have efforts to disqualify Republicans from being able to hold office. It's getting that severe. Civil war is already upon us. Because if it is true what Congressman Troy Nehls is saying, then law enforcement is going after politicians. And that's extreme. The weight of the federal government, which is currently controlled by Democrats, going after political rivals. Or, at the very least, it is the view of those on the right that it is happening. So it's hard to know for sure, and I have to stress this. Maybe Congressman Troy Nehls is just wrong about this, but let me actually break down for you what's going on, what Adam Kinzinger is saying, and where this is all going with the statement from the DHS on terror, and you can decide for yourself. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com and become a member to help support all of our work here, videos like this, and our journalists reporting over at timcast.com. If you want to see more of it, become a member, sign up, and you will also get access to exclusive members podcasts from the Timcast IRL podcast that go up around Monday. They go up around 11 p.m. Monday through Thursday. Check those out and support our work. But don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Let's read first the Twitter thread from Congressman Troy Nehls. He tweets, breaking. The Capitol Police Intelligence Division investigated my office illegally, and one of my staffers caught them in the act. On November 20th, 2021, Capitol Police entered my office without my knowledge and photographed confidential legislative products protected by the Speech and Debate Clause enshrined in the Constitution, Article 1, Section 6. 2 days later, on Monday, November 22nd, 2021, Thanksgiving week, 3 intelligence officers attempted to enter my office while the House was in recess. Upon discovering a member of my staff, special agents dressed like construction workers began to question him as to the contents of a photograph taken illegally 2 days earlier. Capitol Police never informed myself or senior level staff of their investigation, and the reasons are clear. They had no authority to photograph my office, let alone investigate myself or members of my staff. So why is the Capitol Police leadership maliciously investigating me in an attempt to destroy me and my character? Maybe it's because I've been a vocal critic of Speaker Pelosi, the January 6th committee, and Capitol Police leadership about the handling of January 6th, the death of Ashley Babbitt, and the subsequent sham investigation. These are very bold accusations. Dressed as construction workers? Now that's the craziest thing here. Special agents dressed like construction workers began to question him. We have the story from the Daily Beast, the left's perspective on this. Interestingly, the Daily Beast, which I'm not a fan of, actually just makes the story sound more suspect. But let's slow down for a minute, and I'll help you explain what's going on. The Capitol Police, they're police. They enforce law. For some reason, they have created a national intelligence division with offices being set up on the West Coast and the East Coast. Why? It's very, very strange. And many people feared that with the establishment of a federal intelligence agency, they would start going after anyone who supported Trump or opposed the establishment uniparty. And it seems here we are. But maybe Troy Nehls is wrong about this. Well, hold on. There's a lot more to break down in this story. The Daily Beast reports GOP rep claims Capitol Police secretly broke into his office. Rep Troy Nehls disclosed on Tuesday that Capitol Police had secretly broken into his office to investigate something. He's not saying what they were looking for, however. They say in an eyebrow-raising series of tweets that read like a paperback political thriller. Oh, is this an opinion piece? It's not an opinion piece. A reporter. Okay, this is an opinion piece, mind you. Rep Troy Nehls divulged on Tuesday what we already know and I read. Nehls has been aware of the incursions almost the entire time because police botched the supposedly clandestine entries. But the Texas congressman only disclosed the breaches now. The tweets came 2 days after Axios reported that a January 6th shadow committee featuring Nehls, an election objector, was investigating Capitol Police negligence in response to the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. Nehls, a former sheriff, claimed that on November 20th, Capitol Police secretly entered his office and took pictures. So this is, we read the thread, we know this. Nehls, who characterized the entries as illegally executed and unconstitutional, said the officers had interrogated the staffer about the photos, but did not disclose details about what the police had photographed or what they asked the staffer. The police, he added, never told him nor specified his senior level staff why they're investigating him. They say, but on January 6th, Nehls had a different reaction. He took up arms alongside Capitol Police and Rep. Markwayne Mullin to face down rioters attempting to breach the House. The two congressmen broke off pieces of wood and stood shoulder to shoulder with officers who had their guns drawn as Trump supporters pounded on the front doors of the House chamber. Nehls has since turned on the police, however, most specifically making a public show of questioning the legality of Babbitt's shooting, which an internal investigation found was justified. In July, House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy nominated Nehls to the January 6th committee along with Rep. Jim Jordan, Rodney Davis, Kelly Armstrong, and Jim Banks. After Pelosi rejected his choices, citing the fact that they were in a mix of election objectors and members who rejected the idea of a congressional panel to begin with, the crew opened their own unauthorized shadow probe. In late October, the Daily Beast reported that Banks had sent letters out to a number of government agencies requesting information about the attack. The full list of agencies he contacted is unknown, but many were reportedly the same departments contacted by the January 6th select panel. So let's slow down for a minute. The January 6th panel has been targeting political rivals, specifically going after those who worked for Trump, going after members of the media, whether you like them or not. When these Republicans said, let's have balance on this committee and have people who are not all totally aligned with your worldview, they said no. That is to say, Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger are on the side of the Democrats on this one, and there is no populist opposition. When these individuals sought to investigate on their own, they are now having Capitol Police intelligence screening their mail and entering their offices, as Troy says, illegally. They go to mention the same morning that Nehls posted his tweet storm, fellow Republican from Texas, Louis Gomer, took to the House floor to announce, without evidence, that the Department of Justice had examined congressional mail 5 months ago. Without evidence. Does Nancy Pelosi have evidence on the things she claims? No. Is there evidence of an insurrection? No. Well, there's evidence that people fought with cops, but the FBI says there's none. And that's not my opinion. That's the FBI. So who are they to come out and claim insurrection? You see how the game is played. Quote, we have seen that our mail, we've got two mail just a day apart. One came in September 17th, stamped by the department as being received and reviewed and examined, and another from a Christian missionary to me, and it was reviewed by the Department of Justice, Gomer claimed. Well, we actually have a statement from Rep. Louis Gomer from gomer.house.gov. Rep. Louis Gomer condemns and exposes the DOJ for the apparent unconstitutional tampering of private constituent mail. Writing, as of today, in January, my staff received a letter addressed to my office, my official office, from a Christian missionary, which was already opened and stamped DOJ mailroom, with a date and X-rayed on the stamp. Last week, my office received a second piece of mail from a constituent, mailed from East Texas and postmarked September 2021. Now, this is, again, look at this. Last week they got it. This is mail that was withheld. It took 4.5 months to reach my office and was also opened and bore a stamp from the DOJ. It is deeply concerning that legislative branch mail is somehow being commingled with executive branch mail when we have completely different proprietary zip codes. We are separate but co-equal branches of government. Even if it were a mistake to deliver Congress's mail to the DOJ has an obligation to immediately notify Congress and forward the mail without opening it. Let me just point out the severity of this. Mail going to a co-equal branch of government should not be intercepted by another branch of government. That is overstepping their bounds. This is very, very disturbing. Very, very disturbing. This is why I say you need to understand it appears the Civil War has already begun. I know. People expect to look back at history and say, that's what it will be. It will be the battle at Fort Sumter. Or not. We're in a completely different era. Intelligence is the game, character assassinations, manipulation, etc. We have hot conflict. We have extremists fighting in the street. Kinzinger said in his interview that you'll get militias out on the street fighting each other, and that's how a civil war starts. But you see, the problem is these people don't know how to look forward. See, I don't want to look backwards. It's important to look backwards and look at the Civil War to understand the complexities of how these things arise. But it's also important to look at the current state of affairs and to look forward as to how these things might manifest differently. When the Democrats take the weight of the executive branch and use it against their political rivals in the legislative branch, my friends, you have the weapon. This is civil war. Now let's talk about a few things. Was the American Civil War truly a civil war? Not in a global definition of the term. It was. We call it the Civil War. However, civil war is typically referred to or seen as, in many countries, different factions fighting over control of one government. That's what we've seen in most civil wars. In the United States, it was an attempt at seceding from the Union, thwarted by the Union. Still, in a sense, it was a civil war, but the North effectively invaded the South to stop them from seceding from the Union. Maybe people on the left don't like that that's the case, but that was reality. Now, in my opinion, there was a strong moral cause. Slavery is wrong. And in my opinion, there were a lot of southern states, namely Texas, that's basically said they were seceding because of geography. In which case, I think for a lot of reasons, the Civil War, the North was justified in engaging in this conflict with the South. I absolutely do. Let me break this down for you. Union military bases in South Carolina, Fort Sumter, to be specific. The South said, get your troops out of here. And the North was like, we pay for this. We fund you. We're not doing it. You can't just take this from us. As Ulysses S. Grant explained, the admission of these states into the Union was paid for through blood and treasure, and their security was maintained. They had no right to just seize those assets and leave. Not only that, slavery is wrong. And so you had a strong moral cause from the North saying, if we pay for it, you can't just up and leave. You've got to negotiate these terms. And the South said no, and slavery was a major catalyst. Now, I'll admit, there is a major conflict in terms of in the morality of how all of this was done. Abraham Lincoln was suspending people's rights. There's even stories about him threatening to arrest a Supreme Court justice. I'm not saying that it was easily defined. No, the whole thing was nuanced. But my friends, slavery was wrong. And there's a real argument too, if a military base is paid for and supported by the North, you can't just up and leave. As Grant stated, blood and treasure paid for their admittance into the Union, and now they're going to leave and effectively just take that blood and treasure along with them. That's making for a great conflict. What we're seeing now, though, is more akin to the civil wars we've seen throughout history and very different from the American Civil War. And that is to say, factions within government are fighting other factions. It has not yet reached a point where people are caning each other in Congress, but it has reached the point where prominent figures on one faction are using enforcement actions against their political rivals. So, we are at the point now where law enforcement is going after politicians. This is a key component in almost every civil war we have ever seen. And where does it lead to? Really, really dark places, in my opinion. Right now, we have a statement from the DHS from yesterday afternoon. Summary of terrorism threat in the U.S. homeland. The DHS put out this statement that, in my opinion, it's actually rather shocking and scary. They say, the United States remains in a heightened threat environment fueled by several factors, including an online environment filled with false and misleading narratives and conspiracy theories, and other forms of dis, and malinformation, introduced and or amplified by foreign and domestic threat actors. These threat actors seek to exacerbate societal friction, to sow discord and undermine public trust in government institutions, and to encourage unrest, which could potentially inspire acts of violence, mass casualty attacks, and other targeted blah, 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 blah. You get the point. They're going to say, actually, I'm going to read more for you because you're going to realize how bad this gets. Could they be talking about Black Lives Matter? No, of course not. They're talking about those who are challenging the establishment. That is what's truly scary. They're talking about, truckers, workers, working class people. They're talking about you and me. They go on to say, the primary terrorism-related threat to the U.S. continues to stem from lone offenders or small cells of individuals who are motivated by a range of foreign or domestic grievances, often cultivated through the consumption of certain online content. The convergence of violent extremist ideologies, false or misleading narratives, and conspiracy theories have and will continue to contribute to a heightened threat of violence in the U.S. They're going to say key contributing factors. The proliferation of false and misleading narratives which sow discord. For example, there is widespread online proliferation of false or misleading narratives regarding unsubstantiated widespread election fraud and COVID-19. Grievances associated with these themes inspired violent extremist attack in 2021. And the false narratives around police brutality. What about that? Oh, it's not here. They don't actually call out the far left. No, the $2 billion plus in damages from the far left, the destruction, the amplification of Black Lives Matter extremist ideology is not listed here. The DHS has put out a bulletin directly targeting one faction in our ongoing civil war. Now, you can say this doesn't constitute a civil war because we're not at the point of hot conflict. Well, it's certainly a cold civil war, but I would go ahead and just say I think you're absolutely wrong. When you have a Republican representative saying, special agents dressed like construction workers broke into my office, maybe it's true, maybe it's not. My friends, you're in civil war territory because either they did or the Republican is lying and sowing that misinformation the DHS is so scared about. And the DHS is correct. If the DHS is correct and misinformation is going to lead to violent extremism, and you are on their side, and you don't believe Troy Nehls, then you can only assume he's spreading misinformation that will lead to violence. Or he's right, and Capitol Police are illegally breaking into the office of rival politicians. Call it what you want, man. I don't care. Adam Kinzinger says, civil war. The Daily Mail reports, Rep. Adam Kinzinger says, there is a real possibility of civil war in the U.S., And it would be naive to think it's not possible after he was censured by his own party. They go to mention he's talking with CNN, Wolf Blitzer, etc., etc. Kinzinger explained the rioters, specifically one man captured on video wishing to drag lawmakers to the streets. He says they were certifying a fault because they believed it was a false election victory. Probably really believes what he's saying about election fraud. And you could multiply him by hundreds or of thousands or millions of people. If Donald Trump and his allies convince enough people 2020 was stolen from him, the Republican legislator claimed, it's not a far-off thought that someday some militia shows up somewhere to do something, and then some counter-militia shows up, and truly, at that point, that is how you end up in a civil war. I never would say that we would ever have ended up in that position, but now I believe it's a real possibility that we have to be wide-eyed as we walk into so we don't have that happen again. Wolf Blitzer was like, are you serious? You really believe this? And he says, a year ago, I would have said, no, not a chance. But I've come to realize that when we don't see each other as fellow Americans, when we begin to separate into cultural identities, when we begin to basically give up everything that we believe so we can be part of a group, and then when you have leaders that come and abuse that faithfulness of that group to violent ends, as we saw on January 6th, we would be naive to think it's not possible. Adam Kinzinger hit the nail on the head with the hammer in that statement. Well, not so much the end part, but the beginning. We're breaking into identity tribal-based groups. Now, in my opinion, I'm all for the truth. Adam Kinzinger is not. Now, maybe he believes he is for the truth and I'm not, and therein lies the main divide. I think he is a duplicitous liar for the most part. He'd probably say the same of me. And that shows you, well, he's right. I think the media lies. I think CNN lies. I think what they're trying to poll with Madison Cawthorn is proof that we are in civil war. Take a look at this. Will Madison Cawthorn be brought down by insurrection? And the New York Times basically says, yes. They say you need to understand that if the voter challenge succeeds in establishing that Mr. Cawthorn engaged in insurrection, he would be ineligible to serve in Congress. The critical point to understand is that if you engage, according to the 14th Amendment, in insurrection, you can't be in office. They're not trying to win elections anymore. They are not trying to win elections anymore. Let me repeat that. They are filing a legal challenge so that the person they don't want to win literally cannot run. And if we get to the point where the right-wing faction, the out-group, says, we want this person, but the in-group says, as those who hold the gavel, we won't let you run that person, then there will be no representation. And then you'll have people on the right saying, Madison Cawthorn is our rep. And you'll have people on the left saying, or the in-group, no, he's not. We won't allow it. And then what? What will law enforcement do when Madison Cawthorn shows up to Congress? Will the Capitol Police say yes or no? I think it's fair to reason the Capitol Police will not allow a representative duly elected to come. And then what will happen? North Carolina will have their fake candidate show up and come into Congress. And then you will have civil war, or whatever you want to call it. I have one idea as to what may actually lead to this, because the American Civil War had a strong moral cause. I have explained this idea before, but in this context, as I often say, it bears repeating for those who did not hear it. I believe abortion will be, or I should say, I believe abortion there's a strong probability. Let me slow down. If we enter a hot conflict with states breaking apart and fighting each other, I believe a major catalyst that would contribute to that would be abortion. I don't know if the country will break apart. I don't know if we'll go from a cold civil war to a hot civil war. The Cold War with the Soviet Union ended, and now we're just in standard international standoff. Okay. It's possible that this cold civil war we're in, ultimately, you could argue it's hot because of the street conflict, but ultimately simmers down. I don't know how far this goes. You know, Kinzinger is saying it could go to a real civil war. But here's what I think might occur. If you look back in time at the American Civil War, slavery was a strong moral issue. It was a strong moral issue that led many states to secede. Not on the merits of it alone for many people, but yeah, that was basically the cause. A lot of people want to argue the nuance of states' rights to do what? Among other things. You had 7 states who seceded from the Union before there was any war or conflict. It was after the battle at Fort Sumter started, many more states then started to secede because of what they viewed as tyranny from northern states. So that means many of these states were absolutely willing to abide by Congress's decrees or laws on banning slavery. But it was the conflict in South Carolina that ultimately led to many more states seceding. So it is a complicated issue. But a strong moral issue was needed to effectively start as a catalyst for this conflict. The issue of slavery was an unanswerable question because you had two very distinct worldviews. Now, I think any sane modern person recognizes if you were to actually read the Constitution, you'd be like, yes, slavery can't happen, right? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And Ben Shapiro makes a point about abortion, that if the state has any job, that one job is to protect life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that means for the unborn. Which brings me to the strong moral question around our upcoming or current cold civil war. Abortion. A question that cannot be answered. That the left thinks they're entitled, even though they can't answer the... Look, I'll be real. For libertarian reasons, and much to the chagrin of many right-wing and pro-life individuals, I fall on the slightly pro-choice side. And that basically means I don't want the government involved. Someone goes to a doctor, talks to the doctor, they make a decision, end of story. I do understand government is involved with medical procedures, but I'm very much on the libertarian side of things, and I don't think the government should be questioning people as to why they would have to terminate a pregnancy. Personally, I think terminating a viable, healthy baby is wrong and life begins at conception, but I'm not a fan of government. I'm not a fan of strong government, overly strong government, especially on medical issues. Take a look at what's going on with COVID. Very serious problems. My body, my choice. I say the same thing for vaccine mandates. Now, my position aside, we had recently oral arguments to the Supreme Court about a Mississippi abortion law that restricts it after, I believe it's like 11 or 14 weeks. I can't remember the exact number. It is widely believed by the mainstream press and many on the left that the Supreme Court will overturn Roe v. Wade in June, or when they officially release their officially put out their opinion on the matter. If they do, I believe there's a strong likelihood that so first thing you're going to see is trigger laws immediately go into effect. There are many states that have already passed laws saying the moment Roe v. Wade is overturned, abortion is now illegal. This is going to create major conflict because there are many red states that have banned abortion, Planned Parenthood still operates in. This means you're immediately going to have the more dominant red Republican or right-wing faction, pro-life faction, which could be some liberals, going and protesting to shut down these illegal then clinics. In blue states, they'll continue to operate. We then go to the November midterms, which is widely believed that Republicans will win for historical reasons and for gerrymandering reasons. Although I don't know if the Republicans are aggressive enough to actually win, but let's say they do. I believe Republicans will try to pass a federal abortion ban because they now have wind at their backs. And I believe that the conversation from Republicans around it's a states' rights issue will change the moment they have the opportunity to take power, because that's what people do. Many people have said, Tim, the Republicans won't do this because they believe it's a states' rights issue. Wrong. I think people, given the opportunity to take power, will take it. And right now, the argument for the pro-life side is to say states' rights to overturn Roe v. Wade. But once they do, they'll say it's wrong outright and it's murder, therefore. Now, assuming the Republicans win, and then into 2023, they do pass this ban, Joe Biden will veto it. They likely will not have a majority strong enough to override a veto. But then you'll get a Donald Trump who will say, if I'm elected, the first thing I will do is I will sign that bill. 2024. We then go to the elections. For obvious reasons right now, it seems possible a Republican will win, but who knows? It's an eternity. I'm just giving you a hypothetical. A hypothetical about as to why abortion could be that moral catalyst. 2025. The president comes in, day one, signs the bill, abortion is banned. Blue states revolt and say, we will not abide by this, and we are now abortion sanctuary states. Which brings me to a very dangerous precedent. Self-defense allows for the defense of others. That means if there is an abortion doctor attempting to abort a viable baby, maybe even like 7 months in, and an individual tells him to stop and the doctor won't do it, there is a question. Maybe I should throw it to the legal scholars, but I believe there's a strong argument that a person could act in the defense of that baby and use force against that doctor. I don't know for sure. It's a complicated process. I mean, the doctor's got to be engaging in the process of trying to abort a baby. But think about the possibilities of this. If Roe v. Wade is overturned, then in red states where they have trigger laws and will outright ban abortion, then you're going to have pro-life individuals showing up to these clinics saying, you're done. In fact, you'll probably have the police doing the same thing. What about blue states? In blue states, the police won't come and shut it down. And I believe there's probably, even if there's only 10 people in this country willing to go to a blue state and say you're in violation of federal law and you're committing murder and we've won the argument, it's possible. Now, look, there are a lot of ifs, ands, buts, maybes in that whole assessment. So, maybe it's just never going to happen that way. It's entirely possible Supreme Court just comes out and says, we are not overturning Roe v. Wade. It is settled. That seems very likely as well. It's just, I say this based off of the statement from many activists who truly believe Roe v. Wade is getting overturned. The reality is they may just be saying Roe v. Wade will be overturned to try and rally people to prevent a loss for the Democrats in the midterms. I really don't know. I do think, however, that pro-life issues are strong moral issues that could be a major catalyst for a civil war. Many pro-lifers actually say that abortion is our generation's issue, slavery issue, that it's a very, very, strong moral issue about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I believe life begins at conception. I believe that there are reasons why pregnancies need to be terminated. I believe that should be a decision between a doctor and an individual, and the government shouldn't be intervening because these can be embarrassing, intrusive, and I don't think it's the government's business. However, this also means that there are circumstances where an individual will try to lie, cheat, or steal into terminating a perfectly healthy baby for no real reason at all other than they simply, they decide to. And therein lies the big challenge. When does the government intervene and have the right to know? If you're trying to maintain a ban on abortion, except in certain circumstances, then the government has to know what's going on. I don't know if I have a strong enough moral position on this because I don't know if I'm smart enough, or I don't know if I understand enough about the nature of reality to take a stance on this outside of how I just explained it. I'm perfectly fine admitting I just don't know, man. I really, really don't. I have issues with government. I have issues with, too much intervention, but I also have issues with someone deciding to kill a perfectly healthy baby, even at, late term, like 7-8 months, when the baby is completely capable of living on its own. These are tough questions. On the left, they think they have a right to terminate a baby at any point, but that to me is nuts. It's just, I think it's insane. But where does that leave us? A civil war is possible, in my opinion. It absolutely is. The scenario I laid out is just that. I think there's a strong probability none of that ever comes to pass because there's a lot that would have to happen for it. But I do think everything I've pointed out in that scenario is entirely plausible. And I think if you believe those things are plausible, then it's entirely possible civil war does happen. But we don't even need to go to that point. That's just a hypothetical on how abortion could play a role. I genuinely believe when you have people like Ron Perlman, a celebrity, coming out and calling for national divorce, when you have people like Michael Malice or Luke Rudkowski saying maybe it's the best option, we might not get a civil war. We might just get the U.S. breaking apart. The problem then, resources, oil, nuclear weapons, who gets what? Okay, civil war it is. If a national divorce were to occur and red states and blue states says, go on your merry way, and many red states that are northern are sucked into the blue state group, and many blue states that are more southern are sucked into the red state group. All of a sudden, you then have someone saying, we want water, we want oil, and we want guns. Fort Sumter. The federal government said the fort is ours and you can't have it. So when federal authorities for the blue side are controlling a nuclear missile silo or something, and the South said, the Republican side or the anti-establishment side, I shouldn't say North or South because it's not going to be North or South, to be completely honest. But when Faction A says that nuke is ours, but Faction B says, well, it's in our territory, that's how you got the Civil War. Because as I mentioned, I believe it was 7 states already seceded from the Union before any fighting began. It was only when the North said this military resource is ours, fighting broke out. So call for your national divorce. There is no peaceful divorce because someone will say, we need guns, we need land, we need food, we need water. And when the other side says, no, this one's ours now, I'll put it this way. California and Colorado, where would they go? If Colorado is mostly red, but there's big blue cities, what happens when the cities start defecting and breaking apart? What happens when the red the faction takes control and then says, we will no longer allow Colorado River water to go to California. Then it gets interesting. Or Arizona, because, the water's got to flow through, a couple different states. What happens when they say no water? Southern California is going to revolt. Their water comes mostly from the Colorado River, and they'll invade. I don't know what's going to happen, man. I really, really don't. But I can tell you this stuff's scary stuff, and it's been getting worse, and it will get worse, and I hope you recognize that. We went from, in only a few years, people fighting in the streets to now Capitol intelligence officers being accused of storming a Republican congressman's office illegally, dressed as construction workers. Don't be the frog in the pot boiling. Go find a friend. I'll tell you this. Go talk to someone in jail. No, I mean it. Find someone who's been in jail for the past 4 years. Ask them. Tell them these things. Say, this happened, and this happened. What do you think? They're going to be like, what? That's crazy. Because it's been so rapid and so insane. I'll leave it there. Next segment is coming up tonight at 8 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimCastIRL. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.